Hi, hi, hi. All right, previous video was a bit intense, man. I kind of lost my way halfway through, so I'd appreciate any kind of like feedback on it. It was titled Gods as a Creation, Not as a Representation. Huh. But this video is about being smart and just being able to use your brain. I think there's a difference. Let's go for it. Smart versus being able to use your brain. So, I started studying to become a programmer 2 years ago. On my journey a year and a half ago, I entered the boot camp. Met a lot of beautiful people. Everyone, from the people running the boot camp to the people to the people like in the boot camp. Beautiful people, all the best positivity and all that shit. But it was at that time that I felt I wanted to feel I had just come back from like Africa and I wanted to feel kind of like a sense of community. Or completely didn't feel. I actually was shunned any chance they could. Not just by the students, or with the students, I did my own fair share of stupidity. Like I'd open my mouth. I really wanted to be heard. Just like I don't know. I felt like I was needy when it comes to the students. When it comes to the teachers, they were being horrible, and they weren't mean or anything. It's just in general. Maybe I wanted, maybe I wanted some like actual attention when I ask a question and shit like this. I had no idea. I wrote about it in my blog and I discussed a whole lot of things and I actually monitored my change, how I changed over the course of like the 60, 50 something days that I spent over there. But one of the things that stuck to me was the fact that a lot of the people were not really interested on where the whole, like whatever we're working on came from somewhere. Some people thought about something and they started creating things for it. And the goal of the bootcamp was to get us to be able to program. Done. They didn't care if we know anything about what we're doing. All they cared about was how we actually did program. And it's after like I finished with the bootcamp and I took some time with myself and I started reading more about just in general the things that historically have contributed to whatever it is tools that I'm working with, right? Like if you had a hammer, you could understand where a hammer came from. But you had a software named, for example, I don't know, Vue.js. Like where the fuck did it come from? Why was it a necessity? And basically, like why is it built on top of another two different languages? And how did they come to a decision that this is necessary, right? Like all these kinds of like questions that you have. I wanted to figure them out because I just was not the kind of guy that does something in order to get something else done. I needed to understand what I'm doing. And slow and steady, I got better. But the people that I was working with naturally like got jobs because like, hey, do this, this, and this. They'll go and they'll do it. They don't really like stand in their own way. And not denying their brilliance, but a big part of me was feeling that I was not actually like up to the task because of what was happening. A big part of me was feeling like I was not really doing well when I really wanted this so much. A big part of me was feeling like I was fucking failing. Actually, no, a big part of me was feeling like I was a failure. There was a big difference between failing and failure. I was fucking failing, but I was feeling like a failure. Failing is fine, it's easy. Once you accept that you failed, then you kind of like automatically you see what made you fail. You can't get away from it. I failed. Oh shit. Okay, so this kind of like contributed the most. Deal with that, and then next time you failed, it's not this that's gonna have to that would have contributed to the next failure. It was something else, and eventually you get rid of all the stuff that contribute to your failure. But that mentality wasn't what I had. My mentality was I was a failure. Sucked. Naturally, that mentality was because I wasn't shown, I don't know, I wasn't given that attention. And when I say attention, it's like when I ask you a question, answer that question. As stupid as that question is, it needs to be answered because my mind is trying to click, it's trying to create like some path for something. And if my question is not answered, then basically it's going to result in something. And I I kind of like had weird questions, maybe. I don't know, or maybe it's the way I ask questions. But as I like got better at myself and handled myself differently and ended up kind of like getting back into the flow of the programming world and actually like building my first website, kind of like building my confidence back up again and kind of like going, oh, I'm not a failure. I just kind of like took my time or needed more, or I started blaming stuff. And then it took me another year for me to get out of blaming stuff and start slowly and slowly kind of like articulating what are the things that could have went wrong and what are the things that I could have done differently. Because you have to do that, right? Who the fuck wants to feel like they're a failure? Nobody does. And effectively, when you're looking at yourself as a failure, the first thing you do is you kind of like start recollecting all the things that could have happened if you hadn't failed or if you weren't a failure. Which is kind of the most horrible thing to do because you're self-punishing yourself and self-sabotaging and wasting time. And so I instantly like I did not want to waste time, but I also did not want to intensely reflect on it because I was in my failure mentality. So there's a high chance I would have been failing at reflecting as well. But I approached it in a more harmonious way. But one thing I realized that there's this very big difference between just being able to use your brain and actually being smart. And the reason I say that is because afterwards, as I met more and more programmers, I find myself trying to have conversations with them about all kinds of things that I'm kind of like engaging with in terms of the actual programming world. Most of the time, some good fucking programmers, some smart ones, some like ones, senior ones that are working in like companies that are just amazing. I don't know, just kind of like are not really interested or don't really seem to have a clue about what I'm actually trying to talk about. It felt like there's a cultural difference between where I'm looking at when I'm looking at the whole computer science world and where they're looking at it. And then a friend of mine describes a phenomena called code monkeys. And a code monkey is just a person that you tell him what to do, he codes it, he finds a way to code it, he doesn't want to think. And then instantly it hit me. And just last week or 2 weeks ago, I was walking in work and I remembered where I was having this conversation with my friend and it hit me. And I was looking at everyone around me and I was trying my best to see like how could you tell the difference between somebody that's smart, like an engineer that's smart, an engineer that just kind of like knows how to use his brain. Like he's good at math or he's good at engineering or he's good at like whatever. Or a computer scientist that does that, or an English literature guy that is just right. Like there has to be like that difference between like that brilliance behind something, and just on the other side, just people that are able to produce or to do something very well, just able to use their brain, not their mind, their brain. And so for me, smart turned out to be more of like who actually is able to express themselves with their craft, any craft. It goes back to the same things that I'm about, right? Because like that's literally my vibe. My vibe is like, how do I express myself with my profession? How do I create my own personal brand through the work that I'm doing? How do I show the world who I am through what I'm doing? And I started vibing around that being actually like smart because people that are smart incorporate everything around them and everything that they're doing. And thus kind of like evolving whatever it is that they're evolving themselves daily through the things that they actually like do. Because it's not one thing that's being done every day. It's more than one thing and it's always mutating and evolving and shifting and like translating different things. And it all boils down to this expression, man. So this, how do I express myself? And how do I utilize what's around me in order to express myself? Not to say there's something wrong with just being able to use your brain, but is it fair for the people that kind of like use their brain to change the world to be placed in the same category as others that are just using their brain to support the world or to exist in the world? Really? Like literally physicists like compete against each other in order to create something new. A lot of them kind of like don't really go anywhere because effectively, man, they're just good at using their brain, but when it comes to being creative and bringing new stuff to the world, they're stuck. They're probably stuck in their own head. They're thinking a certain kind of way. And I felt like this applies to everyone at any given moment because in some things we're very smart, but reality, we're just good at using our brains when it comes to them. But being truly smart means everything around you becomes just a tool for you to evolve and a form of expression. It's a video, I guess. Bye.